and welcome to what is normally the regular monthly meeting of the Sustainable Environmental Advisory Commission. Tonight, we are here to hear from the public. My name is Jenny Grossman, and I've been a resident of Skokie for most of my life. Good evening, and welcome to what is normally the regular monthly meeting of the Sustainable Environmental Advisory Commission. Tonight, we are here to hear from the I have chosen to stay and raise my family here for many of the reasons you have chosen to live in Skokie. I've been the chair of the commission since 2014 and have led the commission's waste subcommittee for the 2016 sustainability plan. In the waste management section of the plan, there are overarching goals to reduce, reuse, and recycle as much of the village's waste stream as economically and technologically feasible. Reducing the waste stream is a critical component of the village's environmental journey. The benefits include reducing the amount of waste sent to landfills, reducing greenhouse gas emissions that lead to global climate change, conserving natural resources, and saving energy. Skokie community members hold the key to achieving these goals and benefits through their everyday actions. What we want to know is what can the village do in its operations, programming, and education to set its stakeholders up for success. We look forward to hearing from you tonight. As a reminder, speakers tonight will have 3 minutes to address the commission, and those watching from home can submit comments to info@skokie.org. Comments received will be compiled and included in our report to the board. Thank you for coming. Jim?
Can you hear me okay? Good evening, I'm Jim McNellis. Thank you for attending or watching as we invite the public to share their thoughts on the future of Skokie's sustainability efforts. First, a little background on myself. My wife and I moved here to Skokie in 1995 and have lived here ever since. We raised a family here and we love living here. Back in 1995, when we were considering where to purchase a home, there were a couple of key criteria factors for us: good schools and good village services. My wife, having been raised in Skokie, was already very familiar with Skokie's excellence in both these areas. As a member of the Sustainability Commission, I consider it part of my mission to maintain those excellent services from the village, not just for me and my family, but for those who live here now and in the future. Skokie has recently started charging property owners for waste services. Our purpose here tonight is not to argue the merits of that, but how to make the most of this opportunity. Also to consider how we can keep future fee increases to a minimum. I'm confident that if we as a village can reduce and keep reducing the volume of garbage in our waste stream, we will be able to keep waste service costs under control and keep the excellent level of services for current and future residents. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on reducing our waste stream and keeping our village the best it can be. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for attending our listening session tonight. My name is Emily Okolau. I'm a resident of Skokie and have been since 2017, and it's been a great place to raise our growing family. I have a master's degree in natural resource conservation, specializing in agroecology, and I'm a certified arborist. I started doing environmental work almost 20 years ago, and since then, I've observed that we are not feeling the true impact that our modern lifestyles are having on the environment. Skokie has often been celebrated for its great services: the schools, the park district, and even easy waste management. My toddler loves to chat with our village crews who pick up our waste, and they are so friendly. And just like that, all of our waste is removed. But the truth is that there is an environmental cost to that waste, but we just don't see it. We don't think about it after it's gone, and any attempt to reduce our waste has to be entirely self-driven. Tonight, I'm inviting all of you to consider that garbage has a cost, and that we should work to create a better system so that we don't just continue to contribute to landfills. We would like your creative ideas on how we work together as a community to be kinder to our village, our region, our nation, and our planet. Thank you.
For those of you who are here, if you'd like to come up, speak. Go ahead.
first time here.
I'm Caesar Marin. I'm one of the owners at Sketchbook Brewing Company, of Sketchbook Brewing Company here in Skokie. We started last year. I'm not a resident, but I felt like I wanted to come here to hear about your ideas. I'm deeply involved in what we produce as residents and as business owners in terms of waste and how to reduce that. Sketchbook's been around for about 7 years now, and from day one, it's been my mission to try to remove up to 100% of our food waste that we produce. And I wanted to explain a little bit. I'll be mindful of the 3 minutes. Of what that means and how we can actually help to achieve that here in Skokie. So as a business, we're not huge as a brewery, but we end up producing about 12,000 pounds of food waste a week. We're not a restaurant either, so where's that food waste coming from? It's all from the grains that we use in brewing. Now that has a lot of value. It is not garbage. However, it is very cheap and very convenient to just throw it in the garbage. But as I just heard, and I know that there's a very huge cost to that. Where is it going? What is it turning into? Pigs and cows and love to eat that, and so does composting. Composting is a huge, the best way to deal with that. I've tried in the last year or so here in Skokie to try to find a way to divert all of that through composting, and I've failed every single time. The reasons being that it all comes down to the cost of hauling. Like, who is going to haul that weight, that waste, and where is it going to go? There's a myriad of suggestions. The public works here, Elizabeth and Max were wonderful. They came to meet with me. We looked at it, kind of found hit the same walls again. What we're doing right now is we actually invested on a trailer and a truck, and I'm personally taking that waste, food, before it becomes waste, to a couple of farmers about an hour and a half from here, which also has a cost to it. One of my ideas is however you all decide to be able to maybe collect more food waste in the village, to include businesses such as Sketchbook. We not only have a lot of it, we can help with the cost, obviously, by being one more a pickup on the route, which from all my learnings, this service exists right now, but it would cost us about 10 to 20 times more than using trash hauling. So we would love to be part of this with the residents, with other businesses as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm Shira Hammond, and I'm here both as myself and representing Go Green Skokie as well with a short letter. Go Green Skokie would like, first of all, to express our very strong support for this effort currently underway to understand what the options are for waste reduction in the village. We really appreciate that time is being spent on it, that there's a study underway around recycling contamination, that there's a real effort being put forth here in this arena. You're excited also to hear that you're thinking about how to incentivize reducing waste, working to increase composting program participation, and there are a lot of things we've heard going on. We're really excited about this. We hope that the village will reduce trash pickups to once a week. We know that's something that's under discussion. We know that there are some concerns around increased volume, but around decreased volume and how that might impact some folks, but we think there are solutions that don't necessarily need to be twice a week to solve those problems. We hope that the village will also consider whether recycling is constrained currently by frequency or bin size, because we have some anecdotal sort of sense that there is some constraint there, that there are some cases where folks are not recycling maybe because their bins are getting full. So we're very interested for the recycling study underway to look at that and to think about solutions to that. We are really interested in hearing about consideration of options to reduce or eliminate the cost of composting for residents, and yes, for businesses. Really appreciate Sketchbook's efforts and really hope that both for businesses and individuals, this becomes something that people consider affordable across the board. We also think it's important for the village to consider a plastic bag fee or ban and a recycled content requirement for paper bags. We know that the imposition of a refuse fee is outside the scope of this meeting, but we do want to just voice our hope that the village will consider refuse fee discounts for seniors or others with low income, especially if the fee is increased in coming years to avoid a regressive impact of that fee. We know that's outside of SEAC domain, but just wanted to mention it. We hope for the village to think creatively about ways to encourage businesses and individuals to reduce waste generation, not only to focus on diversion rates, although those are very important, but also to focus on overall waste generation and the possibility to reduce it. And finally, we hope for the village to consider how to provide transparency to Skoki's ongoing performance in encouraging waste reduction and achieving increased rates of waste diversion. In addition to this short statement, we've also sent an email with more detailed suggestions. It was sent to both citizen comments and to Liz's email. So we hope that you'll look that over. It's too much to read here, but it's a lot, goes into a lot more detail around these thoughts. Thank you so much to all members of the Sustainable Environment Advisory Commission, to trustee liaisons, to the village overall for giving real consideration to what we achieved here. To the trustees for their interest in the input of SEAC and community members. Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else like that? Come on.
Hello, I'm Jim Barnard. I am here on my own and also as part of the Go Green Skokie group. I appreciate what you're trying to do too. I would love to see us encourage some of the businesses that we used to have that contributed to less waste. For instance, we used to have a store called the Home Economist. I don't know if any of you ever remember that. You could bring in your own container, fill it up, and then take it out of the store. You could recycle that container as many times as you want. No waste packaging. Let's see if we can do something to encourage businesses to come back in like that again. Because I'm sure that there would be people who would welcome that and say, hey, this is good. It makes sense. If you have been at Goodwill recently, I noticed they got rid of plastic bags entirely now. And they will sell you a handbag if you want one. But if you don't want anything, you can just carry out what you bought in your hands. I like that a lot. I don't wind up having to recycle plastic bags because they don't give me any. And it's the same amount of bulk that I'm taking home. So, anything that we can do like that, and anything that our Go Green Skokie group can do to assist you with this, if it's a matter of public education, if it's a matter of having presentations at the library to let the public know about some of these things that are available, or alternative ways to do things that create less waste, we're on board with that. We'll do anything we can to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Lauren Garnicki. I've lived in Skokie since 2010. I think while we need an audit to figure out what's in the waste stream before advancing meaningful reduction strategies, I think that we can encourage residents to use reusable options. For example, refillable alternatives to billboard squeezers. They are there and you just keep reusing them. You can even write your name on them and put them in the dishwasher. That's great. Paper or cloth napkins and cleaning bags instead of paper. This is another way to greatly reduce the amount of waste that we put in the trash cans. And in order to show people what options are out there, because I think a lot of people feel overwhelmed with all of this like green messaging. Yes, with climate stuff, we have the plastic, that's a problem. So have events in the neighborhood, like a street party or block party, where we just educate people and show them all of the different things they could be using instead of paper or disposable things. We could also charge businesses for using non-compostable containers. Lakeshore Recycling has recently said, please don't even recycle takeout containers because they're too dirty. So Tacos Gingy and Skokie has compostable containers. In fact, the only thing that's not compostable from or recyclable from Tacos Gingy are the little salsa containers. Coco Ono and Evanston is all compostable when you take stuff out. Whole Foods, most of the takeout containers there are compostable. Another thing that we can do to reduce the overall emissions in Skokie would be to ban idling. The entire city of Minneapolis has done this, and there's no reason why we in Skokie can't do this also, especially in school zones. And if we're talking about generating revenue, I really think that finding people who have stuff coming out of their tailpipes that's poisoning our children, it increases cancer risk, it increases asthma incidence for the kids who come out into this cloud of exhaust in school. Just walk up and down the street and pick up the cars for still. And in fact, the after-school green club at the Devonshire School went one day with picket signs. The fourth graders went outside and picketed and asked the parents to turn off their engines, and most of them told them to take off. So we tried the carrot, and now it's time for the stick. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is it Ramirez from Central? Did I? Mary?
Yes.
I was wondering if we could ask you a couple questions. Actually ask you mainly one question.
Should I come up?
Please do. Oh,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, well, numbers. And sometimes
yeah.
I wake up early.
So I guess I'm just a little bit curious when it comes to composting for businesses, sort of what that looks like. If I'm curious about the economics. I'm curious about also, you know, are there barriers, and if there are barriers, you know, what sort of like what would removing those barriers look like for businesses? What kinds of incentives might be, you know, might encourage businesses to participate? And you know, there's a lot of questions, but
Sure.
but I just kind of want to understand. I mean, I'm sure that for maybe many businesses that have you know, food waste or beer waste in yourself, you know, I guess I'm curious what, you know, what it would take to convert to a composting system.
I think it boils down to, well, there are many things, and everything that you said is spot on in terms of their barriers or costs. There, you know, everything is a barrier. Everything turns out to be a barrier at some point. Through this whole time that I've been trying to find out what is preventing us, for example, right, from getting to the point where we'll just say like, hey, our waste is decomposted now, no longer in the landfill, and we can keep doing what we're doing every day, right? Has been the hauling part of it, right? So we and I say we, like, you know, I live in Evanston, and we have also had, you know, we're producing a lot more than there before coming to Skokie. We're still producing both places. The issue was actually the same, you know, in some ways. So there's Lakeshore or Group. I mean, they were very good at picking up trash, hauling trash. They're over by us 3 times a day sometimes. So that becomes super easy. You fill your trash bin and it's gone. Like you said before, like boom, it's gone like magic. Not the same thing if you're trying to compost. I mean, some of the solutions that do exist. When I got to a heart conversation with them, it was basically like, hey, if we find more stops for the route, then everything becomes easier for everybody. Imagine again, there's someone driving a truck. If they come to Sketchbook only to pick up that load, we basically have to pay for that person to come in, pick it up, and then dump it. If we are one of 500, or 20, or 30, whatever it takes to fill that truck, then that truck has a better route in that sense. You kept calling the route, more routes, better. That's number one. I think if that service, let's say there's a service being provided, I think I definitely speak for Sketchbook. I could speak for others that I've talked to, and especially in the brewing industry. We're all trying to find a solution for that is not the landfill. We all understand how valuable the side stream, this waste product they're creating is, and it doesn't have to be the landfill. It's not, if we put aside just removing from the landfill, we're also like just throwing away something that actually is good for composting, for feed, or whatnot. It's always come back to the cost of hauling because there's not enough of it happening right now. So we did, we talked to Groot, we talked to Lakeshore, we talked to MWRD, a few smaller, not smaller, but a few private companies, to the point where they're like, oh, if you bring it to us, then it's cheaper. but then it gets to just like as a resident, and imagine if you have to take your trash 2 miles away, put it in your car and take it out. I mean, most people probably start there in their backyard. So it's hard for us to do that as a business and then keep operating the business. Now the reduction, as they said, the reduction is huge, and we all try to do that. Guidance, I think, guidance for businesses as well, like potentially having someone who understands very well how or go to each of the business, understand what they produce and how they produce it and where the waste is going. Because at the end of the day, businesses are trying to keep the lights on, pay the employees, and it's easy to forget about what's going on behind the door or outside. So I think, and I probably missed a couple of, feel free to ask again, but I think that was one of the biggest ones that prevents us.
So if that service were to magically appear, at that point, what do you think the barriers to participation would be for businesses?
If that service appeared, there's a lot in there, because that service could be like, if we need hauling twice a week. If it was just once a week, then it would be a problem.
Yeah.
If we need it twice a week or 3 times a week, but I'm sure that can be just like the trash hauling is today. Seems to be easy to call, and so like I need 4 times a week or twice a week. But that could be one. If it's not enough, not often enough. Some businesses like restaurants, especially, right? They can't keep their food waste around because it's going to smell terribly, and their customers are usually very close. We have a bigger facility, so that issue is not something that we worry too much about. Cost is another, because I feel like we are unique in the sense that this is true to our heart, the founders and our customers as well. But I feel like that could be a barrier for a lot of people. Again, the comparison of throwing something in the trash costing X, and then compost that costs 4 times that X, or even twice. That could also be I don't know if an incentive is necessary. I think it would be welcoming to, but not necessarily monetary. I think just like that gentleman said, not just inviting business to come back, that we're doing the right thing, but also going to talk to the ones that are here now and say like, hey, what if you did X, Y, Z to reduce reuse and not throw it in the landfill. And I think coming back from, I wouldn't say we're still in COVID time, but just the amount of takeout that everybody got used to doing it. We see it everywhere. We see it on our own. I like to walk in the alleys, so I see a lot. There's just a lot more these days. So we don't always succeed, but we try when we invite people to come in to do pop-ups in our business to say like, hey, if you're bringing anything, please bring compost. Can't always force others to do it, but it's a big voice. We all together, we ask, at the very least ask, and put out our opinions. I think it helps.
Are you involved in any, either through the chamber or just knowing other businesses or restaurants? Is there an interest in whether or not they're doing anything now, maybe just because getting there, which you may be going over, but other businesses aren't able to? Are there other businesses that are even interested in composting or signing on to, if we were to require compostables to make it easier. Implement those kind of things. Is there any kind of talk among businesses that you know of?
Not directly, indirectly, I believe, maybe it's more of a belief, I believe it'd be very, very hard to see any other business saying like, no, just don't, not interested. I'm gonna keep using plastic or, something like that. I think if we come up, but I'm not part of any, that would be something that I'm interested in starting. Again, right now, nothing exists, right, in terms of a commercial compost hauler right now, it doesn't exist. That would definitely be something I'm interested in getting more of the folks in Skokie, business folks in Skokie involved. We kind of have a little bit of a, shouldn't call it incubator, but a little bit of like, we invite a lot of restaurants to come into our business 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes 4 times a week. We feel like we've developed a good rapport with a lot of them. So I think that we already kind of have that communication going. I have not approached them directly. The information I have more directly is from other breweries that I know, in the Chicagoland area, and then we all share the same wish, which is like, oh, I wish, my trash hauler could divert this from the landfill, but it hasn't happened. And a lot of them, unless they're really huge, where they have services. And I mean by that, I mean like semi-truck services, brokers picking up that stuff. It's almost all the same story. But I think an initiative to get more people on board, and if nothing else, it looks good, right? I mean, it looks good if you can say, look, I am not putting. I love sharing that with everyone. Like every time I drive the trailer out, it's dirty. It's dirty. It leaks, and it's a little bit smelly. I don't mind it, but I love coming back and saying like I just prevented putting 6,000 pounds of this in the landfill. I saw a bunch of happy cows. So,
Thank you for sharing that.
yeah. Any other questions?
I don't think so.
Well, I had one bit with the companies that you have coming in and stuff and asking them not to use plastic and compost material. How successful has that been?
Sometimes we have our own. I mean, we also, I should say, I feel like we also have some of the restaurants that we work with. They share, and that's why I think it wouldn't be hard. They share a lot of the same sentiments about this, right? So we end up seeing a lot of them doing this anyway. No, we haven't. I think the barrier might have been a little bigger, and this wasn't Skokie, it was a while ago, doing a larger festival. The broached that subject, and it got shut down before it even got to any of the vendors, because it was basically like, no, they're not going to do that. They bring whatever styrofoam because it's cheaper. So in the end, it does become, cost is really a big deterrent for a lot of people. They're going to buy 3,000 of, say, little boats. If the styrofoam is cheaper, which unfortunately it's where we live, these days, I mean, it's cheaper to do the wrong thing sometimes. Then it's hard to, unless there's a billboard in the center. So we, this particular event, which again wasn't Skokie, but it was in Evanston, it was a large festival, and they're no longer there. We actually pushed forward, and we got a composting to happen for the entire fair, and then we kind of put our hands into the trash too, which is that. So diverting a lot of that from the landfill, which was a success. Thank you. Yeah. All right.
May I ask the gentleman a question?
Yes.
What kind of things do you do to divert problems with rodents? We have rabbits, we have squirrels, we have rats all over the place. How do you keep them out of this? It was food before, it's still food to them.
Yeah.
What do you do to prevent that?
So the question is, how do we keep rodents out? We don't like rodents around us at all. Right? We're a food facility. So number one, we have a pest control that checks weekly, basically bait stations, and I mean they're all around. The bunnies are bountiful there. I mean, there's a bunch of them. In fact, they're eating our plants on the patio as well. But I love seeing them. I don't like the rats though. So that's number one, and then number two, keeping a clean facility. Like we sweep and vacuum inside of our facility every day because we don't want to see anything inside. Outside is a little more difficult, and that's why the pest control kind of helps. helps, and then also keeping things out of, out of their reach. Things are higher up, but that's not to say that they're not there, they are.
Yeah, now what about the containers? Because as you know, from walking down alleys, I do that too. Most of the trash containers have holes chewed in them, where the squirrels have gotten in from the top and the rats have gotten in from the bottom. Now, is there a way to find a better container that they can't chew through? Can we put some chemical inside the container that makes the animal sick when they try to chew through it?
I totally see what, because for my home, we have the same issue. We have the lids chewed up. I mean, we use the metal container, so that doesn't happen.
Okay.
And the trailer that I use is off the ground, so that doesn't happen as well. But yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I hope keeping chemicals out of it, but yeah, that's.
What prevents the metal containers from rusting?
Yeah, maybe time.
I was in the pest control business for many years. There's no real good repellent. Just for rodents. All right, just gotta seal everything.
Seal it.
Control it. The company should be doing it. It needs
Yep,
that advice you can ask me.
yeah, and I think it goes back to everyone, whether it's a resident or a business, making sure that, they train everyone to treat the garbage disposal or the composter just like anything else in the facility, in your house. I mean, it's, if it's not in good condition, fix it. If it's leaking, fix it. If your trash is bulging out and it's falling on the ground, attracting rodents, fix it.
I'm looking at it from a standpoint of an incentive to get people to do the composting. Is if we say, hey, not only are you making the environment better, but you're going to limit the number of pests and rodents we have around too. People don't like them, they're gonna go, hey, that's a good reason to do this.
Absolutely.
I think there's a couple of considerations. One of them is going to be that if this is done on sort of a larger scale throughout the village, then the containers are going to be constrained by what the haulers need, right? They have to fit the haulers. Just like, the large containers, the large waste containers are uniform to, the hauling trucks, the commercial, right, the commercial waste containers. And it's actually true for our residential waste as well, right, that these are uniform, for our garbage trucks. And so in some ways it might be constrained by that. On the other hand, if this is something that's implemented village-wide, then we might be able to, I think more frequent removal of these products, certainly in the case of businesses, might contribute to reducing the rodent problem. If compost is removed, maybe not daily, but maybe every other day, then that would reduce it. And as far as residential, I think that some people have had success with not putting it outside or putting it in one type of container until it's the day that it's going to be picked up, by a private company. And then putting it outside, right? So that there's less opportunity for rodents. So.
One is, as far as the rodents go, at least the collective resources, they would give you a metal high plate you can put on that plastic thing, and then the squirrel punches to the side, and they can't get any turkeys. So as long as you can keep the fire on the break or something, you don't have squirrels, but they will destroy the plastic thing.
Right.
And then as far as because I was gonna suggest, as far as the food scraps from businesses, we have two different waste streams, right? You have the food prep scraps, which are
Lauren, sorry, Lauren, you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was more of like brainstorm. But it sounds like for the restaurants, there are two separate food waste streams. One is the pre-cooking and one is the post-cooking / whatever gets left from the tables. So that second one, yes, I think needs to go to compost facilities, which I'll come back to. But the pre-scrap one, it sounds like the cows really love what Sketchbook is putting out. So if Skokie had some type of contract that they had with farmers that are, right outside of the city area or wherever he's taking the grain scraps to. I mean, pigs love other types of vegetables. So like take the grain to the cows and take the other stuff to whatever farmers are growing pigs, and then they could pay Skokie whatever we choose to charge them for this stuff. So Skokie comes with its own trucks, takes it out there, and they pay this delivery fee and then they come back. So this could be something that happens like every day or how often the farmer sees it. And then I think that it actually wouldn't be a bad thing to have Skokie have its own composting facility, and we could track the methane that comes out of there and actually power the municipal vehicles with that. Like there are methane powered buses and trucks and things that we could get. And I think that in general, for convincing residents to compost, I don't think they understand why it's important. I think that we need to educate people on why sending the compost stuff to a landfill is worse than having it go to a compost facility. In fact, can I give one anecdote about that? Okay. We've been trying to compost at Skokie Valley without Jacob, which is the synagogue, for a while. And the upstairs group was less familiar with the concept of composting, and they were sort of resistant to it. I mean, in fact, sometimes downright antagonistic about it. And then one day I got up, and instead of the rabbi's speech, I gave a little explanation for why methane is a more potent greenhouse gas at current concentrations than CO2. And what happens, molecule for molecule, you're basically transforming each, if you were to track that methane and burn it, each molecule of methane gets converted to carbon dioxide instead, and so it's less of a potent greenhouse gas. So I think that in general, people just need, like, education is the sort of panacea. I think we need to explain to people just how dire the problem is, but what the problem is. So it's not just a bunch of people saying, oh, now you have this other thing to worry about.
Yeah, and on that topic, like, compost, I think also back.
Yeah, if you could come to the mic, because they
Right,
can't hear
everyone
you.
can
Yeah, sorry. Backyard composting sort of doesn't get into these discussions, but it avoids all the hauling fees and stuff, and it's not gonna work for sketchbooks, it's not gonna work for all the restaurants. But for residential, it could work for a large proportion of single family homes and avoid all the hauling fees and all the emissions and all the trucks and all the, and so. I mean, I don't know what all the reasons are why people don't do backyard composting. I think a lot of people have never seen it. They've never seen a bin. They don't know what it looks like. They don't know, they feel a little scared it's gonna smell too much and make their neighbors mad. They don't want to invest the upfront cost of the bin without knowing that it's gonna be okay. I mean, maybe a program where we lend people a bin for 6 months and then they can pay us for it or give it back, or whatever, like something that takes away the hardship of starting might be helpful. As well as, like the, neighbor training, block party type things, I think are fantastic. I know Liz has talked to me before about the idea that people tend to listen to people they know on their block. And so how do we encourage that to happen? I mean, we have people who request block parties. Maybe we just piggyback on the existing block parties and send someone out, give us a call, give Go Green a call and be like, hey, can you have someone show up at this block party to talk about composting? Like there may be ways to do some of these things a little bit lower effort, but that gets at that sort of communal network for those things. Also on food containers and things, the other thing that I feel like never comes up, just sort of like the backyard composting never comes up, is like people bringing their own containers. And I know there are like all these legal issues, right, around like contamination and getting sued, but I don't know what all the legal issues are. I haven't had time to look into them all. And I don't think everybody would do it right now, given the way our culture is. But I think that, again, it's the kind of thing that if we're trying to send people to block parties and create a cultural shift, we should have a package of things, right? It shouldn't just be, okay, I show up and this year it's composting only, right? Like I should probably show up with like, here's a whole bunch of stuff you guys can do. Here's some real supports for it. These are some businesses that have it. Here's a sheet that gives you all the businesses that do it. Here's a, and like if you have a packet for people that they kind of can, hey, this is a whole cultural thing. You really can do it. Here are people who are doing it. Here's how you do it. I feel like there might be a way to doing it through people's places of worship, doing it through their sort of already existing community centers where they have the ability to support each other in community, because I feel like that's another big part of making a cultural shift, is that individuals trying to do it by themselves feel scared, but people trying to do it, that's why exercise people, the idea is like you have a partner, an accountability partner for exercise. Like if we can go through the ways that people already form community and do it in a way that actually like feels doable to people, I feel like there's a lot that could be done. That's all I have on that thought. I have other things in that we wrote about. I don't know if you want to hear the list. I should spend my 3 minutes saying, but.
Have we gotten any comments? Sorry not to cut you off, but have we gotten any comments online?
We got Go Green's email
Okay.
with the rest of her comments.
So what I did
I
want
couldn't
to
forward
do,
it to you remotely, so she could talk about it if she wants, or you want her to.
what I do want to do is at least acknowledge the email notifications and all those that we got. There were, looks like a total of 24. I'm not gonna read through all 24, but I do want to acknowledge the names of who sent comments and thoughts and suggestions. We got an email from Leslie Allen. We got an email from Jan Bellotti, an email from Bernadette Berg, email from Paul Reichert, a resident in Lotus Garden Apartments. That was a phone call, anonymous phone call, an email from Sue Lau, email from Mark Lichterman, email from Gerald Siegel, an email from Glenn Bianchi, an email from Becky Brodsky, email from Barb Kuchera, an email from Earl Strasburger, an email from Daniel Gitlis, an email from Matthew Glebe, email from Judy Mendel, email from Bonnie Rubinow, an email from Jim Markman, an email from Susan Berkowitz, an email from Ken Johnson, an email from Emily and no last name given, an email from Valerie Crazy, an email from Elliot Parrish, and an email from Danny Wallenberg. So thank you not only to our participants here, but thank you to all those people that are sharing their ideas too. I just want to acknowledge that.
That's exciting. Will those emails be published in some place that they're publicly visible? Because that's something we've been sort of talking about within our group, that like the village, just the board meetings haven't been publishing letters, and that it feels like a sort of lack of transparency. It'd be great, if citizen comment was sort of publicly visible.
Yeah, we will be putting together a report. First, we're going to be presenting to, we have a smaller group of us, 3 of us who spoke at the beginning, presenting to the rest of the committee, kind of synthesizing what we've talked about, and then as a commission where we go from here. And as part of our report, we will include the comments that came in and comments that were made today. I think probably just as an addendum or an appendix to the report that we present to the board. Public everyone to see.
Yeah, we definitely want to include all the commentary. And like Jen said, we have to, the work in subcommittee is then to start categorizing and breaking down, okay, things fall into generally these categories, and all that's going to inform what we bring to the larger commission in terms of here's what the recommendations should be, and then take it to the vote.
Cool. No, and I know there'll be a lot more research, I'm sure, also that's done by the commission. Every recommendation isn't going to pan out, but
Yeah, and looking at read these earlier today, and there's a lot of commonality. So that helps us see where, and obviously some of those things but still may not be feasible, but at least if there's things that we're hearing often, that's what we right. And a lot of what you guys said tonight is mirrored in these comments that people, they're long, we take a long time to read through all these, but it's a lot of them you all have said.
I don't know if I should go through other things. You got my letter, I guess, but the letter from all of us.
Okay, well, thank you, we appreciate it. We're scheduled to go to.
Regular meeting, and then if you come back, table this and then it.
The interesting thing I found out for all these, the support we have for this option. Against it.
Right. Really nothing. We're gonna continue on our agenda for the,
Just, I guess, so we're bringing the listening session to a close, I guess. I personally want to thank everybody who spoke. There were some really great ideas, and it was good to hear the efforts that people are already doing from the sketchbook. That was great. I also really appreciate the effort that people put in to submit comments by a lot of really good comments there too. So, thanks for everybody. This is very helpful.
And I'd like to address that by saying tomorrow we have a Go Green Skokie meeting in the library. We showed up for your meeting. We'd love to see some of your faces in our meeting. Okay?
What time is it?
What time?
7 o'clock. It's in the business center on the second floor. Normally, we will be trying to meet in the Cosmos room, which is right by the west entrance, so people don't have to track through the library when there's bad weather, you know. But this time, something else was scheduled for that room, so they asked us to go to the business center. However, the business center is a little bit bigger, so we have more room, just in case you're worried about, not being able to get in there and still maintain your distance. No problem.
Let's go green.
Yes,
I used to belong to Go Green.
okay. But we're trying to start one up here in Skokie, so we've got many people that are interested, and let's see where we go. You know, there are many other villages who have successful Go Green groups. And of course, we have the Go Green Illinois group, which is fantastic. So I don't see any reason why we can't get ours going.
It's best.
Yes, that's about.
Yes, yeah. So, you know, I hope to see you tomorrow.
8 o'clock?
7.
7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your comments.
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you, Cesar, for being in the hot seat there. Thanks. It's much appreciated.
So that automatically refresh.
the next, okay, the next item on our agenda is the approval of the August meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Okay.
Any corrections or anything? All those in favor of the adopting the minutes?
Aye.
Okay. Motion. Okay, next on our agenda is some old business. Max, if you would provide us an update on greenhouse gas inventory.
Okay. Just as a reminder to those who may be listening to the YouTube live stream, we did publish the listening session is going till 8:30. We do have the public comment computer on over here, so it will automatically refresh if people send in comments. So I've always wanted to say our chat lines are still open, so give us a call. We're still here. We're still listening.
Is that playing audio right now?
Huh?
Is that playing audio? I'm hearing some audio.
It's the meeting- it's the meeting after the meeting in the hallway. So, okay, old business. GHG inventory update. I spoke with Kevin from Delta Institute yesterday. So making good progress on the GHG inventory. Still waiting for a couple critical data pieces, but he is working on the draft of the GHG report already, and is a couple weeks out from having that draft complete. I will circle back to what a couple of those data pieces are in a minute, but he is prepared to come and present the draft report to you all at your November meeting. So just know that as I talk about the data pieces, don't be frustrated when I talk to you about data pieces he still wants and think, oh my gosh, you're telling me he's still months away. He's not months away. He'll be here next month. He's still waiting for a little bit of fill-in NICOR and ComEd data. He's also still waiting for some comp or comparison data, most particularly from Evanston, to utilize to help us answer the question, okay, so we have Skokie numbers, what does that mean and how does that fit in vis-a-vis some of your peer areas? And then some finalized waste tonnage data. So they're making good progress. They also need a little bit of HVAC information from us on tonnage of some of the units for our village buildings and refrigerant recharge and some information like that because of the disproportionate impact that can have on GHG emissions. So to wit, though, as I said, the critical path item is that I think Delta is a couple weeks away from finalizing their draft. And they will be looking to be before you at your November meeting, which brings us out of order in the agenda to the question of when the November meeting date is. A doodle poll went out looking for preferences or issues between what would be the regular meeting date of November 23rd or the meeting date of 11/30. For Delta's purposes, the 23rd would be the preferred date. I think it was, we have a quorum of this group either way on the 23rd or the 30th. So unless it meets with strenuous objection, I would suggest to you, we probably keep the original date of the 23rd. Although if it were the preference, I think we could probably make the 30th work. I think I have the polling result here. I believe we end up with 8 participants on either of those two dates, 23rd and the 30th. So
We're just looking at changing it to the holiday.
yeah, it was just a question of whether the Tuesday before the Thanksgiving holiday posed any sort of an issue with
Yeah.
school calendar or whether there were, whether the school still did teacher conferences. I mean, my son's 26. I don't know what happens with teacher conferences anymore, but you know, they still do parent teacher conferences the week before. I don't, so.
You're exempt.
I am definitely exempt. That is for sure.
You got others.
Yeah. He has conferences with other people. Yeah. So that's where we're at with GHG. So we're close. Okay.
Do you have an idea of how long he is anticipating this presentation?
I do not. So he is talking about dry running it to Liz and I the week of the 15th. So I'll have a better idea then as to how much time he's going to need. Because as you folks on the subcommittee working on this subject matter know, we will need to talk by that time about this, and we need to finalize or make progress on that discussion too. So yeah, I know that's really makes us busy for that November meeting and then potentially for the December meeting as well. So yeah, I'm concerned about that
Okay,
too.
yeah, that's what I just was wondering. He's expecting it to be full. I mean, we could keep up the full 2 hours just
Yeah.
discussing this,
Oh, for sure.
so.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't have the heart to tell Kevin when we were on the phone the other day. November. Okay. No. I kind of had to say, gosh, that's great. I'm glad to hear it. While I was thinking to myself the same thing you are. I'm like, oh, how am I going to do that? Okay. So yeah, we'll have to feel our way through that.
Okay. And then as far as his presentation, is this a final report, a draft report that he'll be presenting? Like, what level of completion are we? Which is to
I'm
say,
good.
sorry.
I'm going to regard it as still being, I'll still call it draft. I mean, we're not going to see the draft and he's not going to have the draft written, I wouldn't say, until immediately before we see a run through of it on will be the week of November 15th. So it's happening fast for me, I think, to go from draft, here it is, to final.
So, I mean, I guess my question is, I should have just asked my question, which is after his presentation, if we say, okay, this looks good, but I'm wondering if you could, expound on this or add this or,
Yeah.
do this differently for better comprehension or whatever else that would be in the purview of what could happen.
That's my
Following.
expectation, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I expect to do the same thing.
Will we have access to the PowerPoint or whatever material he's going to present prior to the meeting? So
Yeah, I'll make a note of that and we'll certainly, Yeah,
'cause I think
talk
that
about
would
that.
help expedite the conversation.
yeah, no, that makes,
Probably, it might be useful just to give him the time, right? To just say, you've got an hour. or 45
Yeah.
minutes.
no, that makes sense.
Is,
Yeah. One question.
is he, will he be presenting to the board at some point? Or is this just
Um,
us?
I think that is the game plan at this point, but I don't know when and I don't know what. He and I talked about that in concept on our call earlier this week, but to me, that's still out there a bit. I mean, we need to see it, see what it is, see how it fits with us and see how it fits with what we think before we talk about how it fits with the board and what their schedule is. So. So I was non-committal on that aspect of the timeline with them.
Okay.
So. Okay. The pumpkin composting event is just a reminder for November 7th on Sunday from 7:30 to 12:30 at the parking lot northwest corner of Oakton and Floral. I believe we have volunteers from this commission assisting the last farmers market of the year. Is that correct, Ms. Tennis?
Yeah, that's the information I was given.
Yes. A chance to fly the environmental flag, engage, toss some pumpkins. Good.
So they're throwing pumpkins at us? Is that what it's saying?
Well, that could be arranged.
Community stands like pumpkin smashes. Making it more fun.
I just want to be dressed.
Yeah.
Last. Um,
The next item is the UIC capstone recycling study update. As you guys know, Liz has been pretty involved in this, and some of you are going to be more involved in this on November 1st. I'll just read to you the update that Liz has prepared. The recycling study wrapped up data collection for the set out rate and the capacity percentage study of toters utilized. So far, the data looks like it's good data, not meaning that the results are necessarily quote unquote good, but it's good, reliable data. We had a couple issues of note. In one instance, the truck drivers got ahead of the data collectors on the first week Friday routes, and we lost some of that data. But it happened to a lesser extent the second week. However, the good news is we had pulled extra random addresses on other routes, and so we should be fine with the overall analysis. We had a second issue on Indigenous Persons Day because that was one of the collection days, and that is not a collection day where the village or the contractor makes any alteration to our collection schedules. But remain a lot of people in this town who think that makes an alteration to our collection schedule, so they do some weird things on that day. So I noticed it in my own office and have for many years that the phones don't ring, and people, I guess they assume we're in Cook County and they think that we're closed or something. So that again caused a little bit of strangeness on some of the routes, but the good news, as Liz notes, is that seemed to impact all the routes that we were looking at sort of equally. So we don't think that's a big concern for the data overall. The next portion of the study is November 1st at 1 o'clock at Public Works. We will be pulling toter contents back to our garage for the contamination portion of our study. Joy Rifkin of LRS, who is their new recycling coordinator, will be there to teach us how and to educate us on contamination. All SEAC members are welcome. Some of you have already RSVP'd to be there. Doesn't necessarily mean that you need to get dirty and dive into the contamination and the recyclables, but some of you I know have said you'd like to be there at least for a while to sort of see the process and watch it or understand the process. Gloves will be available, but as I said, you don't have to get in there and wrestle around with the recyclables, but you may if you wish. 1 o'clock on November the 1st. So the UIC students have pulled FOIA requests for recycling tonnage information and have received results from some of the nearby communities. The final report will be December 7th at 10 a.m. and we will be sending out an invite to SEAC members for those of you that would like to come in and be present when the students present their final report. So it's going well. We're looking forward to seeing the results.
When did you say that?
Pardon me?
When was that presentation?
It'll be December the 7th at 10 a.m.
And Max, I think I mentioned it to you before, the analysis you're gonna do on November 1st, for those of us who can't be there, photos or video.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, for sure.
You said the 7th?
So
The 7th is the final report.
7th, December
November
7th,
1st is looking at the second.
right, the contamination. Right.
Yeah, Alex and I are gonna try to videotape him from the first.
Yeah. Yeah, it should be fun. And it's going to be a great lead into the next waste study that we'll do, which will be the really fun one when we bring in the garbage toters and see how many recyclables are in the garbage. That's the really fun. So. Okay.
Max.
Yes.
Commissioner Render, I think, wants to say something.
Hello, Bob.
My question was asked about the video. Thanks.
All right, very good.
Thanks, Max. Before we move on to the next item on our agenda, we have just received a comment on the YouTube feed here. So I'm just gonna read that out loud because it's not email to you. From Mary Cristobal, who said that they would like to suggest we hire a sustainability officer when funds allow, or a sustainability coordinator. Thank you for your comments. Okay, next on our agenda are some items of new business. The first is the Aquifer water monitoring system update, which you saw your news story today. There was an article about that, but
Yep.
Max, you can. talk about that?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on that for a moment and make sure that everybody saw that. It was in e-news. Okay, and it's going in New Skokie. New Skokie editions go to the households.
Probably by next Monday.
Okay, so it'll be in
It's online.
okay, so it'll be in New Skokie. Well, then good. So you saw it in e-news, then you're slightly ahead of the game. I just wanted to make the Environmental Commission members aware that there will be a little blurb running on Aquifer. So for those of you that don't remember, the village made an investment late last year, early this year, in the Aquifer system. And what the Aquifer system is basically installing sensors into our water system, which are designed to provide leak detection. The way in which the village has done leak detection for many years is we would go out in the dead of winter and we would do acoustical listening on our system to try and identify water leaks. Not all water leaks manifest themselves by, the classic, water shooting in the air, identifying itself as a leak. A lot of water leaks don't surface, or they don't surface for a long period of time. So you do acoustical listening generally in the dead of winter at nighttime because the system is quiet then, right? So the point of that is you can have an awful lot of water loss that goes undetected for an awful long time. So Aquifer is a joint venture that ComEd got into to take advantage of their monitoring technology, where you put sensors into the system that listen, except they don't listen acoustically. What they're really doing is monitoring pressures and flows in your system, combine it with machine learning that learns and teaches itself how your system operates and what the normal rhythms, if you will, of your system are throughout the course of its 24-hour operation, and then can detect anomalous behavior. So the village fairly recently had an instance where, even though the system isn't 100% installed, it virtually is now. And in fact, we're doing a kickoff internally with the staff for the system launch this coming Friday. But nonetheless, the system isn't entirely installed, but we were able to detect a significant leak event that occurred on early morning Monday hours that ended up being in the Southeast Industrial District and had a flow rate from that water leak that was over 750,000 gallons per day. Do I have that figure right? And the leak sprung, let's see, at about 3 o'clock in the morning. My highlight one here, pardon me for a second. At 3 a.m. on a Monday morning. And if you see the graphic depictions of this, it's fairly obvious when the event took place. And so it happened on an early Monday morning. Literally, when our operations staff came in at 7 a.m., we had an email and a graphic printout from the Aquifer folks who are monitoring the system saying, there's this event that's taken place. You have multiple sensors in the system that show you that something anomalous has happened. Now, that doesn't always mean that there's a water leak. It triggers you to ask questions about what other potential causes could be of the anomalous event. But nonetheless, it triggered us to go into that sort of an investigative approach. And what we found in looking at that was that we had a significant water main leak in the Southeast Industrial District, and the water main was leaking directly into the sewer system. So that leak would not have manifested itself anytime soon, unless it had manifested itself by significantly scouring the base of the roadway in the Southeast Industrial District, which, has heavy, semi truck traffic over there and could have manifested itself in quite a dramatic fashion by, having a major roadway failure. And so instead of having that event take place and leak for a long period of time, which could have been weeks or months, because who knows how long it could have leaked into the system. There are times when I'm in the city of Chicago, right? And you wander around and I hear water running in a sewer, and I know it hasn't rained in a week and a half. There shouldn't be water running in that sewer, but I'm not a normal person when I walk around listening to sewer sounds, right? Who knows how long in an industrial district, water's running by a sewer. Okay, what's the big deal? There's no telling how long something like that could run. So, we could easily estimate that in this case, that could have easily run for 120 days or something like that. And had that been the case, the wholesale cost of the loss of that water would have been about $140,000. And instead, we, in a period of time, just over 48 hours from first being told by Aquifer, something anomalous has happened in your system in the southeast part of town. You need to go out there and try and find it. We had found it in a fairly, unusual occurrence in terms of it going directly into a sewer. It was also partly attributable to the fact that we were able to look at sensors we have in our sewer system and note some flow increases there, which gave us ideas about where in our system to go look. We were able to go in and find it and fix it in 48 hours at a lost water cost of about $2,000. So we know that, there's a couple things that we're trying to solve to. It's not just about money, right? It's about the resource too. And that's why I want to bring it up to your attention. Part of this is about water conservation. Water systems lose water every day. They do. People don't talk about it a lot. Water systems don't talk about it a lot, but every water system loses water. That's a normal part of running a water system. It's been a frustration of ours for a long time. And I think for all well-managed water systems, you don't want to lose water. You want to minimize that as much as you can. We've been looking for a technology, a way to try and improve our performance on that. And we had thought going into this that Aquifer was going to be a system that was going to let us do that. And so we were excited about this happening because to us, it validated pretty quickly that this is why we did that. And so, our first year cost, for installing Aquifer service was $92,000, and our average expenditure for that is going to be $166,000. And just this instance alone, we feel like you can make a pretty easy case that basically we can more than recoup that cost off of this one instance. And this isn't the only, thing that we've seen in the system.
So Max, you said it was 750,000 gallons?
Yeah.
a day?
Yeah. So
So, like, if that's the case, I actually just did some little quick math for you guys. That's 8.5 gallons a second we lost.
So it was 700. It was slightly over 750,000 gallons a day.
Yeah.
So
about 8.6 gallons lost.
yeah. So and those costs are, the water costs, the cost for water loss is at a wholesale rate. What we're paying Evanston, and that's kind of conservative because it's hard to say what you pay Evanston at any given moment in time. And Emily's chuckling because she has, she works in Evanston. Okay. But it's just the way the contract is structured. There's a truing up of certain aspects of what our water cost is that don't happen until later in the year. So that's an estimated cost, but nonetheless, so it's a good story. Because like I said, it's about trying to do the right thing and use technology. And I was going to say, we see other ways in which it's telling us information, and in one instance, part of it was doing an investigation and determining one of the sensors wasn't reading correctly too. It's an interesting thing to work with. And so as I said earlier, we're just about 100% with it, ready to kick off this coming Friday with training all the staff who are going to be involved in operating and working with it. So it's ready to fully go live, but it's a neat system, and I'm pretty pleased with what we've been able to do with it so far. So I just want to make sure you're aware of it before everybody in Skokie reads it in New Skokie.
Next, can I just say, I just want to say thank you for bringing up the environmental cost and the resource conservation cost of it, because I think that that's something that we don't necessarily think about because we live so close to Lake Michigan and you know, we have water here. I mean, we don't, you know, we get rain and we have water and we don't really think about water, but you know, water is going to be and already is one of the most limiting factors globally. And so I really applaud you for being so proactive in conserving water, even though it's, you know, it's not just for financial reasons.
No, thank you.
I would also add, not just the water, but treating water takes a lot of energy. And so when you have treated water like that, that's flowing directly into the sewer. That's another aspect. That's, you know, the total resource cost of the water we get includes not just the water that comes out of the lake, but the treatment of the water. And it's really important.
Yeah, that's a great
Even
point.
if we live right next to a great big lake.
Yep.
I also want to ask if there are other, so it's interesting that you brought up the other applications of the Aquifer system, right? The sensors not necessarily working the way that they should.
Mhm.
I think there's also potential for evaluating water consumption. I'm assuming there could be, you know, that could be an application down the line, right?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if this is also technology that can be applied to other utilities and if it has been. So it sounds like ComEd has this system, right, to be able to monitor their grid. This is something that I have no idea how natural gas works, but is this something, you know, that could potentially be implemented there, and could the village be a part of, you know, I mean, you know, I'm wondering how we can use this technology beyond just water and beyond electricity.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question. I mean, that's you know, that's the path that ComEd has taken it, right? I mean, ComEd recognized, or somebody did, whoever, I don't know whose idea it was, right? But it was, in this instance, it was somebody recognizing that ComEd, you have all these service centers that are staffed 24/7 and call centers and people who are around to watch things. And you have a whole infrastructure in place to respond to events. And then you have these smart grid systems and you manage a utility and so you have all these capabilities that are in place. How can you leverage that asset to make money doing something else that's similar to that, but different, right? How can you apply that to management of gas infrastructure? Or how can you apply that to management of some other type of utility system? And then it was really, you know, I think ComEd's ability to do that line of business combined with, you know, one of the other technology partners in this is a very small Israeli company called Takadu. And, you know, Israel is a country of real prominence when it comes to water conservation for fairly, you know, obvious reasons, a very water limited region of the world. And so they are sort of a cutting edge country when it comes to innovation around water conservation and minimizing water loss. And so, you know, in a technical partnership with their ability to come up with some of the sensor and machine learning and event management software that's on the backside of that, married with ComEd's ability to manage a utility system merged together. So yeah, I don't know what else they will
I can
find.
come on to the natural gas part because that was in that for 20 years. Yeah, they're just as mature as ComEd, their systems. So
Yeah.
they've been doing it for years. Yeah.
What's actually kind of funny with the Aquifer stuff is that there's actually a write-up on their page about this instance that happened.
Yep.
So.
I too want to just congratulate you. It's exciting that you said it's not even really live yet, but it's live and it's already getting results. So that's exciting. And I hope you're ready for all the alerts that you're going to get from the system.
Yeah.
Keep your phone on.
Yeah, I know.
It certainly
Yeah.
seems like it was,
Alerts.
They even have a video. apparently.
it certainly seems to be, you know, I mean, you hear, I think, so much about things like AI and the variety of ways in which it can help. And I think it certainly shows that in concert with human beings, rather than, in place of or something like that, that I think was some sort of potential concern about the future, but I think in concert with humans, obviously, there seems to be a huge potential in the future too. Like we were saying, who knows what else we can do with that technology. So it certainly seems to have been a very smart investment in this case.
Yeah, it's neat, for sure. The last item I have on there is this vehicle, village electric vehicle purchases. Just wanted to tell you, we're continuing to make progress on that. Purchasing electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles. We do have another electric vehicle for the village pool fleet here that's spooled up. We're just waiting to bring it to the board because we're trying to figure out which hybrid vehicle we're going to partner with when we bring it to the board. And we also have a large area mower that we're going to buy, but we're going to wait to buy it to this spring because we don't want to start the warranty period since we're going into winter. But you may see it mowing the Crawford Avenue medians, and Chris will know which unit I'm talking about. So it's not like a John Deere big tractor, but it's, one of those that's going to be all electric, which I didn't even know they made all electrics of that till a few months ago when we demoed one, but we're going to buy one of those. That's a pretty neat machine. So that'll obviously be a lot nicer. Yeah, obviously it'll be zero emissions, so that one will be pretty cool. But the one that we're kind of most interested in, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about, is I may have mentioned to you in the past that the village's fleet of refuse vehicles, we have a dozen of them, the big yellow garbage trucks everybody sees on the routes, 4 days a week. We have bought Crane Carrier Corporation as the chassis manufacturer, and Crane Carrier was fairly recently bought by a company called Battle Motors. And Battle Motors' plan is to become the company that makes electric garbage trucks. And so we being the public works superintendent who's responsible for automotive, and myself, had met with Cumberland Motors, who is the Crane Carrier dealer for this area, and one of the business development folks at Battle Motors a few weeks ago. And we are told that in the first quarter, or by the end of their first quarter of their next year, that Battle Motors has allocated a slot in their production run for both us and for Evanston to be allotted one of the electric garbage trucks, which would be, I think, really cool. Why do I say that? It's one thing for us to electrify our fleet when we're buying pool cars, because obviously, as you all know, that's amongst vehicles, that's low hanging fruit, right? We know how to go out and buy a Volt or buy a Nissan Leaf or something. The challenge for us was always going to be, what do you do with the heavier equipment? What do you do with diesel powered equipment? One challenge we still have in front of us is going to be, what do you do with a squad car that's got to go out and do the things that a squad car's got to do? How do you alt fuel, or how do you electrify that application? Refuse trucks are actually a pretty good electric application. Perfect. They go out, they do certain things, they go a certain number of miles, they come back to their base, they do a lot of braking, so they use regenerative technology to recharge their batteries.
For those that don't know, also, like, the one reason it's perfect is because with diesels and these trucks, you want torque, and electric motors has 100% torque immediately. So that's where you're going to get all your energy savings too, which is where also most of your emissions come out. So this is going to be huge.
Yeah.
With even just one truck, we're going to see reductions.
Yeah. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. The cost factor for us is probably, they don't know for sure what the cost factor for us is going to be. It's probably going to be 1.5 times what we're currently paying for one of those garbage trucks, which is $265,000. So you're going to be looking at probably spending $400,000. Now, there's some there's some things that may come along with that, or likely will come along with that. There's going to be the possibility of grant funding to offset some of that cost, since it's an electric vehicle. And Battle Motors has folks that will work with us on that. They're not entirely familiar with what, unique program opportunities there might be in the state of Illinois. Battle Motors is based in Ohio. We're not sure, what federal opportunities there might be. We'll look into that, and we've begun to do that. But what they've represented to us is that they're looking for people to work with. Both Evanston and Skokie have used crane carrier equipment in our refuse operations for a long time. We're side by side. We both have longstanding relationships. If they're going to partner with somebody and pilot with somebody in the Chicagoland area, apply, salesman speech to this, of course it would be you two. Why not? Why not us? So like I said, we'll see if this comes to fruition. If, first or second quarter of next year would put us at something like maybe July, something might happen. They would also provide charger station support should that happen. But I would be really excited if that were to happen, because I know we have a huge challenge coming up in terms of how we make progress on electrifying our fleet in public works, because so much of what we do in public works is medium to heavy duty diesel powered. And of that fleet, the easiest part of that to electrify is probably going to be the refuse fleet. The one thing we may have to give up some on to do that is the snow plowing application. You all know we plow snow with those trucks. Initially, we're probably not going to be plowing snow with those trucks, but I will say that Crane Carrier and Battle Motors have said that's one thing that kind of makes maybe Evanston and Skokie a little bit more interesting to them, is the fact that you do stuff like that is a little bit unusual. So we might not have the power or the solution for that right now, but that is part of what makes you guys interesting.
So they're gonna pay us to demo these. So
We'll see.
So they already have these on the road other places. That's what you're saying, and they're trying to move into different areas. Do they have them in cold weather places? Is that part of the novelty of getting in Chicagoland area? Okay.
Yeah, they don't believe that cold weather is an issue. Their initial sales that they have, and I don't know how many they have on the road now. Their initial sales that they are publicizing are in New York and New Jersey, as in New York City. So I don't think they certainly don't see it as an issue.
It says it's a multi-use thing, it's a stress test, especially with the different tasks and everything.
Yeah.
It says, okay, can the truck do this? Can the truck do that? Can we charge enough to quick to do another one? All these other things. So it's a very good learning and testing opportunity for them.
Yeah.
Understanding and getting data feedback and everything. So I'm sure they'll probably actually have people out there actually pulling data from the vehicle at time. Yeah, I'm just curious, because a lot of what you're saying in electric is on the road in like Arizona, California, and places where the weather's a lot easier than they move up north. So it's interesting that New York is the definition of urban and cold in the winters.
Yeah.
Full in it.
Yeah. New York City waste haulers is that's a tough test environment. Yeah.
So speaking about charging, I guess one of my questions is, do you expect that, if you're imagining 100% electric refuse collection, how is that going to impact like your operations, right? Because if the vehicles are sort of charging for the night or whatever, then snow would be impacted. Even though these can't do snow, like if they could, then it would be impacted as well. Like you can't go all night moving snow, right? And then use them again, like they have to rest. They have to go home and have a nap and eat their lunch.
Yeah.
They have to get their 8 hours off, right? The union requires that. And so I don't know, like I guess it's very far down the line, but it's just something that came to mind for me.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, you're gonna have to think about changing the way you do business, yeah, for sure.
Is
We'll
part
just
of,
sit at home for, right? That's what I'm hearing. We're just gonna, the whole village is gonna shut down.
Well, no, but I mean, those are the choices and the decisions that are gonna have to be thought about. I mean, if we're gonna, that'll be some of the things that we will talk about once we get the greenhouse gas emissions inventory and we start to talk about setting scientific goals and we start to talk about, 60% reductions over however many years it was Kevin was talking to me about. He said, okay, 4.2% reduction in your emissions per year doesn't sound like much, right? Sure, you can do that, right? Well, after you get past the first couple of years and you have to do this every year, right? It becomes more and more and more difficult. How are you going to get there? And so as you think about a public works fleet that does the things that we do, you think about how are you going to move that fleet to achieve those targets? You're going to be forced into thinking about the fundamentals of how are you going to go about providing this service, right?
Well, it sounds like also, it sounds also like which emissions are you going to prioritize reducing,
Right.
right? Because if you're gonna have extra vehicles, then just having extra vehicles, there's also an emissions cost to having vehicles that you're not using, right?
Yes.
There's
Right.
There's material that right? And so- Yeah.
And-
Sorry, I didn't mean to
Right.
derail
I
this.
mean, no, right. I mean, there may be
It's like, it's just-
wholesale.
It's like unintended consequences, right, of wanting to. reduce
Exactly. There
certain
may be
things, right, at the
change in
expense of-
composition
Yeah,
of
right,
your
right.
fleet because
I mean,
of factors like that.
Well,
and
one of the
numbers
benefits
and-
too is this potential partnership and stuff too, is that, we could be on the front of being the next for their hot swap, batteries or the quick charge stuff which is developing, you never know.
Yeah, right.
And the truck is pretty nice is because it's just a frame on that, so the batteries are bolted to that, so they're probably gonna be quite accessible and stuff too for upgrades and stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of potential just one truck, and I'm actually kind of really excited about it.
Yeah. And there's probably, I'm sure there's an element of paradigm change there too, right? I mean, if there is the savings, which there should be, right? A savings from not maintaining this diesel thing, which honestly maintaining current generations of clean burning diesel trucks is not cheap and inexpensive. They're very difficult.
Especially in the cold.
So you talk about the avoided costs if the electric vehicle is reliable from the rest of its mechanical components, which are much simpler, and you get life out of the batteries, right? You talk about the trade-offs between the purchase cost versus the operating costs and the maintenance cost. You just may have to just change the way your mind thinks about that calculation, and it's front-loaded cost, but it's not that cost, and it's just different. Yeah.
in,
I was just going to ask also, not to get too off into the weeds, but first of all, I think that sounds like an exciting prospect because I think the more that we can reduce emissions from those kinds of sources, obviously the better. It did start me thinking basically, we were talking at one point about the potential for a network of chargers for electric vehicles. As far as for personal use just around town for people to plug in. So that's kind of reminded me of that a little bit. Is there the potential also, to expand and provide more of those around town, kind of encourage people to convert to electric vehicles more in so doing? And actually, I don't know much about it. Maybe you do, but it seems to me that it would be even better if there would be a way for those chargers to be solar powered, because at least in part, because then wouldn't that actually reduce emissions even further? So
Yeah, I don't know a lot about the solar powered charging stations. They certainly exist. What I don't know much about is their cost versus non-solar powered, but that's a good question. Yeah, we haven't done charging station infrastructure investment other than for our own sort of fleet purposes here at Village Hall in a while, and that is something we need to think about. Liz and I were visiting with Matt Brandmeier last week about some environmental plan components or potential components and some other possibility for other code changes that shy of waiting for a sustainability plan or a new sustainability plan. We're talking about, charging station requirements in the context of private development and commercial development. And we talked about that a little bit. So we do need to give some thought to that, either in the context of the sustainability plan as a plan goal or outside of the sustainability plan as its own sort of action item, because certainly every indication is that Illinois will be a hotspot of some form, or should be a hotspot for electric vehicles, given what the state's trying to do at the state level with development of the manufacturing support for electric vehicles. We should be taking steps to be supportive of electric vehicle infrastructure. But we haven't done anything to make public charging stations available other than the charging stations that we put in at Skokie and Searle, which has now been years ago, and the ones that we put into place here between Village Hall and the library, which has also been quite some time. So
Isn't
Yeah.
federal infrastructure, or isn't that something that's sort of like potentially happening on the federal level, that there's going to be money for this type of infrastructure that I guess would go to the state and then would trickle?
I think, yes.
Right, I think so, I think.
Well,
Yes.
there's also the question of how much private business would be putting in the bill. I mean, if you have places like Hertz stepping up and buying $100,000 or 100,000, sorry, Teslas, then you're not just gonna leave people stranded
Yeah.
in the middle of nowhere. They're gonna have to, that's the cat and the mouse, the
Mhm.
chicken and the egg, whatever metaphor is, the building stations and how many stations you need before people buy vehicles, and how many vehicles you need before people buy stations. And clearly, those types of companies are gonna have to step up and do some support the purchase.
Mhm.
Especially if it happens more of the.
Hey.
No matter.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, I was just going to say too, on the whole subject of electric vehicles, not to get too off into the weeds, but I do believe, I took a look at the public comments that we received before the start of the meeting this evening. And I think one of them does make some mention of encouraging electric buses, essentially, in terms of, addressing the public transportation component. So while we're on the topic of electric vehicles more generally, I did want to point out, I think that CTA and more recently PACE have made a commitment to, I do believe, go all electric. I think in the case of PACE, it was though by fully electric by 2040. So, I mean, things are happening on that level too. Since it does tie in with the public comments and tie in with this, I wanted to make mention of that as well. So I know CTA is testing it, I think, in the city on the 66 Chicago route. They do have some electric vehicles and the charging infrastructure for that, so.
Can I ask a question about the garbage trucks? Two questions. Is the reason that they would not be feasible, at least initially, for snow plowing inherent to the fact that they're electric, or is it just because they're new and they haven't been tested in that and you don't want to break them yet?
Right now, the company does not think that they have the torque requirements for them to plow snow. So more to follow on that. I mean, snow load is heavy and variable, so it's harder for them to predict what that load is like on the truck. So it's something they'll be looking at and thinking about. And, as Chris said, I mean, my suspicion is that the battery's ability will power up quickly over time, and it's, I think, something they will think about, because they know that's something Evanston does. Evanston's trucks are outfitted that way. They don't use them as much as we do, but they know that our fleet does that. They know that Evanston's fleet does that, and they have some presence in Chicago's fleet as well, and Chicago does that too, so they know that.
If we were to go to once a week pickup, but maintain the number of trucks, would that reduce in wintertime when there's snow, how would that play into, the demand on the trucks and the ability to still keep up with being able to plow and having to rest trucks if they're electric?
I don't know. Good question. I mean, I hadn't thought about it in the context of having them be electric, having them plow snow, and how they might need to be rested or recharged. So I don't know. Good question. I have to think about that.
How often do you cycle out with their lifespan?
They're on basically there's 12 of them, so they're based on a 12-year life, because we basically do one a year.
I think that, okay, we were gonna circle back to additional comments if any came in. Alex, did you get anything? Nothing came in on YouTube. Okay, so then the next item on our agenda is discussion of our next meeting, which we did already, and we'll keep it at the 23rd. So then the next is a motion to adjourn. So moved.
Second.